Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to this second bonus. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you may know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. These audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's second bonus, shall we? Former Roman Catholic priest named David, and he had learned all of that information and more prior to leaving the Catholic Church. There's a ceremony called laicization, and he had done that back in 2005. So he has not been a priest for some time. He is roughly 70 something years old. Very, very intelligent gentleman. Very nice gentleman. And he has had a very interesting life. A lot of that information was and can be found in the Book of Giants and in the Book of Enoch. Some I had never heard of in my life and really was blown away. I've got some more information, and after I share his experience with you guys, I will try to get to that as well. He did a lot of mission work, and while doing mission work, he had met Craig, the gentleman from Chile, and apologize for that. So by meeting Craig, he had learned a lot more, and the mission work that he did and still does, not so much physical anymore, was he would help impoverished communities by spreading the word of God, also by helping create wells, septic, all of the things beneficial to a culture or a small village living to the best and healthy ability they can. Now, on top of that, he did mission work in the States, and he was drawn to working with addicts. He had family members who had battled addiction and lost the fight to addiction. So his experience happened where he first had witnessed firsthand these creatures when he met Craig, the gentleman that shared the experience out of Chile. He was not a stranger to these creatures that we know as Dogman. He had seen 3 of them in an undisclosed area, and he does not want this area shared at all. he said you can share roughly where it is, and it was on the Stillaguamish River, which is huge. It goes from the mountains all the way to Puget Sound. So if you can find this location, he said, all the more power to you. He just doesn't want anyone going out there, one, bothering any of the homeless communities that are out along that region, and two, he doesn't want to feel the responsibility for anyone who goes out there and gets attacked by a dogman or a human being at that level as well. Now, he worked exclusively with addicts, and for a 70-something-year-old guy, he reminds me of my dad. Like, exactly. Like, I battled addiction for 20-something years. I got sober when I was 39, and I started using junk when I was 17. So 22 years of being an opiate addict. And my dad, like, still to this day would, like, he called me a junkie, which I was, but he didn't hold any punches. And then, nor does David, because it was funny, and I wrote this down because I thought it was funny of how he put it, being a former priest. He's, his mission work in this area of Washington. Junkies, the homeless, prostitutes, the godless heathens. And he laughed, and he said, no, I'm just joking. He said many of them have a strong belief in Christ and just kind of lost their way. And he said, Jesus dealt primarily with the kind of bottom of the barrel people to help them. And I remember learning about that in church school, like second, third grade church school, when you hear about Jesus always helping, Mary Magdalene, prostitute, the homeless, the thieves, so that was his calling. So he goes and he is aware of this homeless community in a very isolated region of the Stillaguamish River. It's a drive to get there, and you got to park, and it's a hike to get in there. And when you do get in there, it's not like a homeless community you may think of, like in LA or whatnot. These are, you are in a tropical kind of rainforest. Washington, Oregon, all have a tropical rainforest, not like the South American kind, but they are definitely rainforests, not tropical. They are rainforests, excuse me. So they are dense, they are wet, humid, muggy, gross, and not the easiest thing to navigate. On top of having a couple tents here, a couple tents there. They are not one community. They are a bunch of homeless people that are aware of other homeless people being out in that region and setting up their little encampments pretty much away from each other. And he started to realize that when he first got out there, he had taken the hike out there, and he was in his late 40s and took his hike out there. While he is hiking out there, he had to go along the Stillaguamish. There's an area where you have to kind of almost navigate across it, and then you're there. It was a deep and treacherous hike for anyone. But during this period of time while he's walking out there, the first time he had found the encampment, he was made aware of it, and by an outreach program that dealt with drug addicts and such. They would give him clean needles. Not David. David did not believe in that. He actually would get in arguments with the outreach program that did do that, stating that, we are only helping kill these poor people if we encourage them, give them the word, give them the empowerment. Don't give them the tools to kill themselves. Give them the tools to better themselves. That's the way he looked at it. Now he has kind of a different view. He realizes, he didn't realize it back then, even though he had thought about it, but it really didn't line up with his thinking and his belief system at that point. By not only giving these people clean works, you're saving them from very dangerous viral diseases, Hep C, Hep B, HIV, whatever other, sepsis, using bad needles, whatever. But he always encouraged people to stop. So his first time going out there, he said that he had felt like he was being watched. He could sense that he was being trailed as well. And he had documented this in one of his journals. And pretty much what he said was, as I'm walking along the Stillaguamish, it felt like these homeless, because he hadn't even been out there, so he's thinking of this large community, like this kind of medieval kind of setup. He's like, and I feel like the homeless community out there have these sentries that are watching me walk in and making sure that I am, not the police, and I'm not there to cause any problems. Because he physically could hear things walking in the woods as he's walking to this encampment. And I don't think I'm saying it the best way, but it was an encampment. They just weren't a community. And I don't know how homeless encampments work, but I'd imagine that if there's a large kind of group of homeless in one area, that yes, there's going to be dangerous people, obviously, but there's kind of a camaraderie. If someone is getting attacked, quite possibly the other homeless may come to your aid. That's not how this place was. This place was pretty much look out for you and you alone. Now, he was looking for one group of people, a woman and her teenage son, older teenage son. He was in his late teens. And she was a heroin addict, prostitute, on top of being a mom, and homeless. Her son had been in foster care and had gotten to an age where he could leave the foster care. He just kept running away, pretty much, and everyone kind of gave up on him. And he went and looked for his mom. So he would, he had gone to the outreach community in hopes of helping his mom, possibly, and him, of course, get into some sort of shelter, help with some sort of housing and stuff. So he gets into this very deep part of this rainforested area, and he approaches the first encampment that he comes to. No one was there. It was very depressing. He eventually found them after talking to a few other people and giving them, the word, asking them if there was anything that they needed, trying to help as much as he could. And he had a kind of a care pack with him, directly for this mom and son. And he finds them, recognizes the young man right off, and he comes walking up. He was very respectful to David. He had issues with his, mental issues, not mental issues, but his whole kind of mental construct was gone. You see your mom an addict, a prostitute, destitute. You don't have a good outlook. But he did. He really did. And he looked up to David, and two other people in the outreach program. So when he saw David, he said, I remember seeing this young man, and he instantly ran over and gave me a hug and said, how are you? I can't believe you came out here. And he said, yeah, it's definitely, a hike. He said, and this is when he kind of found out that it wasn't kind of an all for one community. It was just one for one. He said, I was hiking in, and, I imagine that you guys have people that look out for you in the woods to make sure the cops don't come out and don't bust you guys, and any kind of issues going on. And he said, maybe it was someone watching you, maybe going to rob you. He goes, but we don't have any kind of community like that. There's nobody that's going to, look out for me and my mom. Nobody that's going to look out for, Dick and Jane over there. So it's just, and he's like, that's weird, because the second I left my vehicle and started to come into the area, when I was on the Stiligamish, he said it felt like someone was accompanying me. And he could tell immediately that this young man knew something, just by the way his face kind of dropped. And quickly changed the subject, got his mom. His mom came out, and he takes this, backpack off with the care package for them. Socks, essentials, water, socks, food, basic hygiene stuff. And he hands her the bag and says, this is for you. It's not much. It's what I could put together today. I wanted to see how you guys were. And, can I visit with you guys for a little bit? And she must have had her fix at the time, because she was not in a hurry to get rid of him. She would nod off and then go into her tent, come back out 20 minutes later and be better. Obviously shooting up. So they're talking, and it's about an hour and a half has gone by. And the young man looks at David and says, listen, he said, I'm not trying to be rude to you. He goes, but, it's getting to be dark soon. He said, you probably should hike out of here before it gets dark. He said, I'll walk you. I'll walk with you to kind of a midway point to make sure that you get out of here okay. That way I have time to get back here. And David's like, no, I'm good. I can walk on my own. And the young man's like, I think it's best though. He's like, there are things in these woods that do follow people. And it sounds like, that they kind of picked up on your scent. Maybe they're aware of, who you are. He was wearing his collar, so, and he's like, things, aware of who I am. And he's like, couldn't make sense of it. So he says goodbye to the mom, asks, if they're going to come to the outreach program in a day or two, that, quite possibly they have, and can get them into a shelter / kind of like a drug rehab. But your son would be able to accompany you. So he says his goodbyes, asks, kind of make sure you come to the outreach. We'd love to get you into this program. Just to kind of get her in, to get her safe. And the young man ends up accompanying David out. And that's, David approaches the conversation again, kind of with, what did you mean things? Did you mean, people? There are people, he goes, because whatever accompanied me into the woods, they sounded human-like. They did not sound animal. The walking was bipedal. And the young man kind of looks at him and says, yeah, just a slip up. There is some dangerous stuff that goes on out here. And he kind of drops it, but it's kind of lingering in his mind, he said. And they get out of the woods, and David says, I can get my own way back now. He goes, go back to your mom. And the young man said, no, let me just walk you to this point. He said, I got to check on someone that has a camp over just up the river a ways in the woods over here. And, I know them, and I just kind of want to check on them. And so they get walking, and it's a good ways in, or a good ways out. He just says goodbye to the young man. The young man kind of turns and goes into this kind of trek of woods. David kind of just stands there and looks at him and watches him, because he's like, this is where, along this wooded area, is where whatever was following me in, whoever was following me in, was along this area. And he's like, maybe it's who he knows, and he unaware of And as he's walking, he, turns, starts to walk out a little more. He doesn't get very far. He hears just this loud scream of kind of pain, agony, terror, a mixture of everything except some sort of physical pain. You could clearly tell that whatever it was, he stops dead because he realized, he's like, that's the young man. And I'm not sharing their names because he doesn't have permission to share their experience. But it's his experience. He doesn't want to share their names. Just for the fact of anonymity. He doesn't know much more of what happened to them after this experience. So he turns and starts to walk back downriver. No sooner did he turn was the young man came running out of the woods crying, blood on his hands, on his pants from where he wiped the blood off on his pants, and just a mess. He runs over and he goes, "What did you do? What did you do?" Thinking he did something, because there's this horrific scream. Now you're coming out, blood all over you. You're crying. What would anyone think? And he says, "I didn't do it." He said, whatever followed. He goes, "Whatever followed you." He goes, "They're back. They're back." And he said to David, he goes, you got to come with me. He goes, "You got to come with me, and you have to say a prayer." He said, I don't know what else to do. Should we bury him? And he's like, he looks at him like, huh? Like, what do you mean? Prayer? Should we bury him? So he's, come with me. Show me what you're talking about. Knowing full well that he's going to have to call law enforcement. And he looks at the young man as they're walking in, and he's trying to reassure himself, just whatever this kid shows us, whatever this kid shows me, show compassion. And, in the long run, I'm going to have to call the police if this kid did something. And I really like him, but damn it. They get into this small encampment. It's just an old style tent. Those old they were bigger canvas kind of tents with instead of the snap poles that are very thin, as big around as a pencil, these would be the metal poles that you would put together. Just a really old raggedy tent. And the campsite is just destroyed. The tent is half up, half down. It looks like any kind of outdoor table, a chair, buckets, everything was just thrown around. There was it looked like a war happened. And he goes immediately over to the tent and he's saying, "My name's Father David. Are you okay? I'm here to help you." The young man obviously didn't mean to do this. And the kid's like, "I didn't do this." He's like, "I didn't do this. What are you talking about? I didn't do this." And he goes into the tent and looks, and he sees this just middle-aged man, violently violently attacked and killed. There's what appears to be claw marks on his person, on his chest, on his face. What looks to be bite wounds, just a lot of blood. His body is barely recognizable. It is in tatters. And he looks at the young man and he goes, "What did you do?" He goes, "And how?" He goes, "How did you do that?" And he goes, "You think I would kill my father?" And he stops and he looks at the young man and he instantly said, "Your father?" And he said, "That's my dad. That's my father." He said, "Why would I kill my father?" He goes, I visit him every day." He goes, "I told you that they are back." And he's like he goes, "You got to come with me." He goes, "Whatever did this is still out there." He said, to the young man, he goes, "You got to come with me." He goes, "We got to go to the police station." He goes, "We got to notify law enforcement." He's like, "I can't leave my mom." He's like, "They're back. I've got to get back to my mom." And he instantly just turns and beats feet the way they came in, leaving David right there. As he's getting ready to leave, he's taking a better observance of everything, kind of so he can notify law enforcement. And he's trying to figure out if indeed the kid did it, so he walks out, and he's walking down the river, and he's thinking about this, and he's like, "This is the oddest, most disheartening event I've ever probably witnessed." He said, "That young man killed his father, or didn't kill his father, but came upon his father dead." He's like, "His mother lives in a homeless encampment. His dad did. He does." He's like, "They're not together, but he visits his father." And he's just he's heartbroken is the term he used. He was heartbroken. He said, I couldn't understand what that young man was going through. And here I am, accusing him of something that I can clearly see that he didn't do this. He wouldn't be able to. In the time that they had departed ways, there was no time for... Plus, he only heard his scream. He only heard his scream kind of for help or take cover or whatever. And he gets out, gets to his vehicle, drives to the outreach program, and explains to the woman in charge of it. He said, "Listen, I just saw them, the mom and the boy." He goes, "And they're in a bad way." He goes, "But did you know the boy's father lived out in the woods as well? Not with them, but And the woman's like, "Yeah, I'm aware of." He goes, "But he's dead." And he said, "I accused the boy." He goes, "I accused the boy of killing his father." He goes, "But we only separated paths for a few minutes." He goes, and he was not dead for very long. He was still warm to the touch, but clearly not alive. So it had just happened within the time period. So it couldn't have been the kid. And he's realizing this, like, as he's talking. And he's like, what could have... Law enforcement, they notify law enforcement. He accompanies law enforcement out so they can find the they find the tent. They walk in. They find the tent. They find the body, and the officers are all kind of just shocked at what they're seeing. There's just this savage attack. Tent is destroyed. One of the officers almost got sick, and he's explaining everything to what he was there for, why he had seen what he had seen. It was just terrifying, shredded. And law enforcement contacts the coroner. They come out, medical examiner. The local head of law enforcement had to come out as well to call the body, dead, homicide. Talk with the examiner. Yep, homicide. Or homicide or a animal attack. As law enforcement's there, obviously calling everything, they do mention homicide. The medical examiner and the head of law enforcement that was there both came to the conclusion after looking at the wounds more. They said mountain lion. This must have been a mountain lion attack. They've been seen, in the area, this and that. So that is probably more than likely what happened to him. But Father, can you show us where the young man is? And he said, yeah. He said, but I don't believe he could have done this, it being his father, and I feel terrible for accusing him of it. And they go to the encampment. He leads them in, and instantly, as 4 police officers and David walk in, you could see the just disdain for him bringing the law enforcement in there. They get to where the mom and the young man were, and can you come with us? Bring your mom with us. We need to talk to you. They did. They questioned the young man. What did you mean? Because by now David's told them, he kept saying, they're back. They're back. Do you think that's what he was talking about with the mountain lion? One of the investigators had said to the kid, is that what you're referring to? How many are out there? And the kid said, they aren't mountain lions, and you know what they are. And David's there as a courtesy for the young man. The mom and the young man both asked for him to sit in with David, or David to sit in with the young man. So he's just like he said, I know for a fact that you guys know what's out there, because a couple of weeks ago there was a park ranger out there telling us that right now we should be on the high alert, because those things are out there, those monsters are out there. And the cop, like, monsters? He's like, what the this was a mountain lion attack. A mountain lion killed your father. You're not being charged. We just need to know what you saw. And he said, I walked into the camp and I found my dad dead. He said, and I know what did it. He said, we've had people attacked out here. We've had them, we found them in this condition. We found them in trees. We found them, tossed against rocks and the most just horrendous predicaments anybody could be in. They end up kind of, they made a mockery of the kid. David takes them to the outreach because he doesn't feel like they're safe. He's confused, but he's now under the impression that, yeah, there's a hell of a lot more going on. And he does get them into that facility at that point. The mom asks him, not tonight, but can you please grab, whatever is ours? There's not much, but, it's probably not there anymore anyway, but, there's pictures of my son when he was young that I've saved. She's like, there's this old plastic box Tucker tote that has, my worldly possessions in it, and it's not much. Can you please? And he said, yes, I'll go. Because once they get to this shelter / drug rehabilitation, and they deal with kind of like a dual diagnosis with mental illness and drug addiction, alcoholism. So they can't leave until they are like 3 days in. They can leave. They can go free and clear. They're not court mandated here. But as a precaution, so no one brings in any kind of illegal or whatever substance in. They could bring whatever. So 72 hours is the kind of, you're here for 72 hours, get comfortable, get yourself fed, get yourself a clean shower, sleep in a bed. And then after 72 hours, if you want to attend, meetings and groups and such, they have staff that, are right there to work with them. So he goes out, and as he's walking out, he gets to where the entrance of where the young man's dad was. And he said, I would never forget that spot. He said, I'm walking along, and he goes, I'm dreading getting to it. He said, because I know, he said, firsthand, I know now that these aren't mountain lions, whatever's out there. He said, the second the boy said monsters, he said, I just knew something was not on the level here. And then when he said, like, the park ranger had been out there, and how quickly law enforcement dismissed, once he said, hey, you guys know what's out there, that park ranger came out and said, be on high alert. They kind of circled the wagon on it really quick, like, oh, kid, whatever, no one's in trouble, here, go. He gets to the encampment. Sure as shit, everything that was theirs had been gone through, ransacked. He goes into her tent. His tent is, anything that was in that tent was now gone. He goes into her tent, and it looked like, it had been ransacked. The Tucker tote wasn't there. It looked like someone had dumped it out and gone through everything, and taken anything of value or whatnot. And he takes he's got a bag with him that he was carrying, and he takes it off, and he starts to pick up pictures and anything that's sentimental. And that's all there was now was, some old paperwork, and these pictures of her family before drug addiction. And he's looking at him, and he's realizing, like, this woman had, a great life at one point. He could see the husband and her and the young man all as a young family. And in his head, he's just like, what could have gone so wrong? Jeez. And he's just gathering the stuff, and it took him longer than he thought. And he kind of gets done, puts a backpack on him, and as he's walking out, he kind of makes the announcement, they aren't coming back. If you want the tent, take the tent, but they're not coming back. And whoever went through their stuff should be ashamed of themselves. It wasn't your stuff to go through, And as he's nearing the exit, a homeless guy, this just really strange looking guy, very dangerous, pulled a knife on him and said, "What's in your backpack? Give me your backpack. Give me anything you have," And he's wearing the collar. He's not incognito. He's like, I am a priest and this guy's fucking robbing me. And he said, listen, all that's in this backpack is pictures from the lady and her son. No, I will not give you anything that I have. He said, I don't have any money. I don't have, whatever you're looking for. And he's like not believing him. He's trying to fucking rob him. And he hears this growl from somewhere. They both stop. The engagement quickly stopped. And as the engagement stopped, he said, I was looking around. So I was looking around, and he said the guy was, you could tell he was afraid. He's huge. The guy's huge. He's not stable, and he's got a freaking knife. And the guy's looking around just the same as I am. And they can hear this growl very, like, it's right in front of them. There's nothing in front of them at all. And he looks at the guy and he said, what is that? And the homeless guy kind of goes, you don't want to know. He said, we need to go. Like, they're friends. He said that. He goes, this clown just tried to rob me. He goes, and now he's like, we need to go. Like, I'm going to protect him. He said, for some reason, as I'm hearing these growls, he said, I just, took kind of one last peek around me, and I looked at him, and he's kind of looked behind him as well. And he said, I just looked up. He said, I don't know what drew me to look up. He said, maybe it was, God calling to me to be aware of your surroundings. He goes, but as I looked up, he goes, I see these red eyes. He said, I can't see anything else. He said, because it's all shadowy, and it's, it's getting dark. It's also been a dark, depressing day with, periodic rain. So he's, like, I can't see anything. There's no sun. It's not it's dusk with that, dusk with the grayness of a rainstorm all day. And he's looking up at it, and he's just like, he kind of puts his head down, and he looks back up at it. And as he looked back up, it put its head out a little more. And he saw what he saw. He saw the Dogman's face growling. He could visibly see these just huge teeth in that snarl. Its mouth was not open. It was growling, teeth visible. That just aggressive kind of growl where, and the guy looks back down at the guy, and the guy turns to look, and he looks up, and he said, as he looked up, he said, I heard another growl. He said, and I looked the other way, and he said, right behind the guy in the trees, he said, there was two more. And I said to the guy, we gotta get out of here. And I rushed past him. And as I did, he said his knife cut my arm. He said, I must have grazed it. He said, I could feel it. I could feel the warmth going down my arm. And it was, there was clearly blood coming out of it. And he gets to the exit of everything, and he can see the river. He sees the river, and as he's turned to look back at the guy to say, are you coming? Because he can't, in his own moral compass, he's not going to leave this guy. He's a priest, he's worried for his own safety, but he's like, I can't leave this guy out here, even though he was trying to rob me a second ago. He said, as I turned to say, hey, are you coming? He said, I saw this just arm come out of the trees. It grabbed him right off the friggin' ground, and it pulled him up into the air. He said, as it pulled him up into the air, he had it by its arm. He had the guy by his arm. He said, this guy was like 6'2", 6'3", maybe close to 250. A big, big guy. He said, it's one arm. He said, I look back and I'm watching it, and it's a split second. It's just so quick. He said, the guy was in the air 1 second. He said, and I'm looking at it, and it seemed like not even a second passed, but he's going sailing through the air, and he hears this sickening thwap, like when something hits hard wood, and he hears a groan, and then he hears claws, just like any kind of animal clawing a tree or climbing a tree. He hears that, and he looks, because now he's like, what the hell? They just threw this guy against a tree. The one that was in the first one he saw went down the tree and grabbed him and brought him right back up into the trees. He said, the other two are staring directly at me now. He said, Jeff, tell your audience this. Prayer did work. He said, but make sure that they also bring some sort of protection, because sometimes prayer may not work. He said, I was lucky in the fact that when I started to say the Our Father, he said, I was practically screaming it. And as I'm saying that, these two dogmen that were clearly going to come down that tree and try to do something to me, or the mangled, whatever was left of that poor guy. He said, I'm saying the prayer. He said, and they went right back up into the deepest part of that tree. He said, I just started running. He said, I'm in my late 40s, and I'm probably running faster than I've ever ran in my entire life. He said, I hear a howl as I pass the entrance to his father's camp. He said, but I do hear, this loud howl. He's like, I'm running along a Stiligamish, and I can hear these things tracking me through the woods. He goes, I can distinctly hear one. He said, but I know that the other two are out there. And he said, I get in my car, and it's getting darker. It was dark then, because he was in this wooded area of, the Washington State rainforest. It's a gloomy, overcast day. So right where they were, it was dark. He gets in his car, and now it is dark. Or dark enough. And he starts the car, and he sees the one that had trailed him standing at the nose of his car. And he said, I beat the horn, and the thing jumped. He said, you ever seen, like when you startle a cat or a dog, they jump. He said, that's what this thing did. Like, it never heard a horn. He said, and it ran back towards the encampment. I drove out of there, and as I'm driving to the parish house, he said, I couldn't help but feel guilty, for leaving his body there, leaving those poor people to whatever dangers was going to fall upon them. He goes, but I had to leave. I was scared. As he quickly leaves, he goes to the parish house. Gets calmed down, calls the Outlook or the outreach program, and asks if they had settled in. Sure enough, they had. So after that night, he couldn't sleep. The whole night, he was thinking about what he had seen. And he came to the conclusion that these were demons. They had these bright, burning red eyes. They were just anything that a demon would and should look like, these things look like to him. And he said to himself, like, if I went there, if I went and talked to them, he said, it would make it that much more real to me, witnessing that guy get killed. Not saying anything about it. It was emotionally distressing. He said, so I took as many jobs that morning that I could take to get it off of my head, to get it out of my head. Normally he would perform morning mass, which he did. But at that point, after morning mass, he would do, other kind of odd jobs, odd parish jobs or whatever you call them. But he's like, I went to the church. I went to the hospital after the church. He said, I normally on this day, he said, I wouldn't perform the sacrament of the Eucharist. He said, but I did, so I wouldn't have to go to the Outlook program or the outreach program. He said, but then I'm there and I realized that how close the outreach program shelter is. And he's like, and I have her sentimentals. And he's like, I couldn't not give them to her because of I'm dealing with something that, he's like, I'm supposed to be the backbone of the church and community. So he goes there and he explains to her and her son, like, your tent was completely empty to the kid. If you had any clothes in there or anything, blankets, whatever, there was nothing left in there. It was just bare. Same as the mom, minus the photos and any kind of sentimental that had gotten dumped in their tent, in her tent. So he gives him the photos and stuff, and he says to the kid, he says, listen, normally this outreach shelter doesn't do this. He said, but, and it's not like your average homeless shelter. There are counselors, there is staff on duty 24/7. They will help deal with addiction, this and that. But kid, you're not an addict. But you've had some traumatic stuff happen, so the director agreed. If you go to classes and get your GED, and if you can do anything that we ask, any kind of help, you're good. So he's, got a setup now. He's going to get a GED, this and that. As he's walking out, the director catches him. Oh, they agree. They signed the paperwork. And they did. Supposedly, last he knew, they did better themselves. Last he knew. But as he's walking out, the director says, come in here. And he does. And she points to a monitor. Just an old TV. She taps on the screen and says, you know where that is? And he looks. And, she's like, do you know what you said? This and that. And, what was in the bag. Just a whole bunch of bullshit. But she turns the volume up. And you can hear. There's no one in there, but you can hear the fan running. So he knew at that point that she had listened to their conversation. And he had told them about that creature, or those creatures attacking that guy, who, crazy enough, you just witnessed what you think are demons tearing apart a dude that was just going to hold you up for sentimental objects. Nothing of yours. He was willing to kill you. Like, how crazy is that? She looks at him and says, I think that what you saw, it sounds like what you saw was a Bigfoot. And he looks at her and he says, I didn't see a Bigfoot. He said, I know what they are. He said, whatever this is, there was something totally different. And so he leaves. And couple weeks go by. He's preparing himself to move to a different parish. The archdiocese had granted him permission to, after a thorough investigation of what had happened. And just he was done. Years later, that was 1999. 6 years later is when he received the cessation. And now, ever since then, he has just been studying, understanding any kind of information he could get his hands on. So that was David's experience. And there you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed today's second bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you for supporting this channel. It is your support, after all, that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.